Fundación WWB Colombia. 40 años, impulsando el poder transformador de las mujeres.
Well, you have the first idea about where you're going on the road, and I did have that, and I was determined to get everybody else who was on the bus to understand and learn how to do it at a time when people were saying, I don't understand what you're talking about. And the idea was to really look at how did you bring equality to women? How did you get women ownership over their own production and their reproduction? And I worked very closely with a group of people from the UN who were very interested in economic development. And I had been international banking, but not international development. And I talked to John, who was way ahead of everybody as being a male feminist and being very interested in development and really making an impact, particularly in Latin America, in terms of throughout Central and African America, and then in the United States. So that is what I felt like the more people who got on the bus and began to understand, it was worth keep driving that bus, keeping it going down that road. And it was not any one person. I could never have done this alone. I didn't want to do it alone. I did it with brilliant people from all over the world and who thought money as something was like love and dance and singing and sharing information. And we finally found somebody that would give us enough money to do that, to test. How do we know that it's an important thing to do for women? Because they had absolutely no access to banking services anywhere in the world. It was all had to be done with a male signature, even savings accounts. And there was no sense of ownership for women. And I think the women in Cali, Colombia had been some of the first who came together and started providing a guarantee to women so that they could gain access to assets. So it was just one thing led to another. And finally someone said to me, well, how do you know that this is something that's really needed? And I said, I can prove it. So he said, what if we gave you some money to hold a meeting in in the 5 districts of the world? Could you prove to us that that was really needed? I said, I'll do it. And everybody who had been involved were scared because they said you had to go get money from government in order to be able to get approval to even do that. But I knew that this man would not have come out of business and taken over a UN institution if he hadn't had some extra financial support in a slush fund somewhere. I'd had that much experience. And sure enough, he provided the money, so that was the first big thing that we had in order to start. And it was an American man who'd been in business and government and took it on. And then his assistant, Tim Rothermill, continued to work with us and helped us and encouraged us. And the first meeting we had was in Holland, where we had already had a legal structure. And secondly, was this woman came to a meeting we had, and she stood up and described what Cali women were doing. And that was because John had found her.
It was a phone call that I received when I started assuming the vice president of Ahorra financial sector. And I discovered that this is something that I like, the idea. For me, credit is a right. Women need to have the right to have access to credit, and normally they don't have it. The guarantee are for the husband, for the family, but not for the lady. And we provide the guarantee, and after we provide the credit, and after we encourage saving, and this is what we start. I invited, when I knew the idea, you were there, I invited to a Club Colombia 13 women, very strong women. The majority of these women I never knew. But I knew that they are very strong and they share the idea. We can handle that. And this was the idea. I said, well, okay, you like to do this with me? Yes, but you need to leadership the idea. And I say, okay, I am the leader, but you support me. And we make meeting all Tuesday, include the ejecutivos, and each of us need to invite 5 women more to join us, to join our movement, to really be a strong group. And some of them are help the micro entrepreneurs, and some just help us as colleagues to create in a new financial sector for women.
Well, I think I would, first of all, I want to say that I was very fortunate to be involved in Cali because I remember going to that meeting in Cali, and I went back to New York and I said, Michela, Cali is a place where we really have the energy to get this going. And Margarita's going to lead the charge, and she now has some women that she's got motivated. And Cali really became our first program. That was our first effort. And from that, then we did other programs. But I got involved because I met Michela, not with Women's World Banking. I met her when I was working in another organization, and she started telling me I had the idea. And I said, well, that's a fascinating idea. I mean, I thought it was at that point, it was just an idea. She was working with another organization herself. But in order to become a real thing, there was a lot of conversations were had back and forth, and I just was very privileged. I just always felt very privileged because there'd be these international meetings of all these incredible women from all over the world, the Philippines, Kenya, all Latin America, and me. And then there were 1 or 2 other men who joined later. But I mean, for me, it was really the first time I had felt like a minority. And it was the first time that I felt, okay, here's something that I can be supportive of that has the potential to change the world. I mean, that actually has the potential to get women access to credit and access to empowered services. So I was just I was lucky. I was in the right place at the right time.
Okay, but I just want to add at the same time that I had also met Beatriz Harache, who was a vice president at the Inter-American Development Bank.
Right.
And her voice, when we told her what we were doing, there had been a lot of pressure on her to do something about poverty. So when she found out that the UN, Brad Morris, was going to give us some money, he thought, well, that's okay too, so we can give you a little bit of help too, So it was a question of planting seeds as you went along, but it was constant. This was 24/7. This was not just once in a while. This was 24/7. But also, it stimulated energy.
Yeah.
And then more people got excited. And then I, at the time, was working for a foundation called Rockefeller Brothers Fund. I'd left Wall Street. And that also helped. So then I went to the New York State Bank, head of the bank. She said, well, how much are the Rockefellers putting in this? We're not putting any money in here if you're not. I said, they're not giving us anything. So that passed away. But anyway, there were lots of people involved. I kept trying to steer the thing, and create linkages of people who were really eager to try to do something. So there were a lot of people involved, and the purpose was not to create a bank. The purpose was to create access to financial services and training. You can't do anything unless you have the knowledge. So we had to start with the knowledge first. But that name seems to kind of shift around, goes back and forth, and created different dimensions in each country. But anyway.
Well, imagine that I see the bus coming full of people, full of wonderful ideas, stories. And when I got to Fundación in 2013, my first goal was to understand what Women's World Banking was about and understand what microfinance was about. I wasn't in the banking sector or the financial sector. I was in multiple other sectors. So I wanted to understand where did this come from, and in order to have the clear picture of where to go to. So I met, the first meeting I attended from the network was in Jordan, and started to see incredible things. I spoke to Margarita and tried to understand the responsibility of taking this bus with these huge people and huge ideas. And I think there was a very great work made by many people that shared the same interest. And this interest was to help low-income women entrepreneurs, not only to access credit, but to have quality of life, meaning the access to savings. At that time, when I got here, the game changer was not credit, was savings, but in order to have savings, you have to have access to credit. So we started to work with a theory of change, having women in the center and understanding what is that about financial products and services and what is that about non-financial products and services, and what the importance of having this both services be given to the same women. So right now what we're doing at Fundación is to work to narrow or close the gap for women's inequality and promote their participation, active participation of the economy, hopefully not only in Colombia, but hopefully in America and other countries. So that's what we're doing right now. And for the question, if this resounds like what Micaela, John, and Margarita dreamt about, I'm here to serve. I hope I'm not the one to say if this has been accomplished or not. I'm here just to, I'm another driver. I hope that we have made a good job, and hope to, especially, I think that we should inspire other organizations to work with a passion and to honor what other generations have done, including innovation, including technology, including what the world gives us today, but not forgetting our pillars and what with all of these women and men stood for so many years.
No, yes, for me it's amazing. When I came a few months ago and look about what's going on with the foundation and the bank, I can imagine how far the foundation is going and how they are focused and change people, and change and transform lives, and how to arrive to rural areas, how to do many things that I couldn't imagine at that time. But for me, it's really a huge accomplishment.
I could never have dreamed that it would be where it is. I was started with we don't understand what you're talking about. And I think that now there's a deep sensitivity in the world about understanding that low-income people, there are greater needs for no-income people than just money, and there's nobody that knows that better than John, and he demonstrated that this morning. But I think that there are other things that are important, and one that I think that it has grown so big and so different, and in many countries, Women's World WWB has become a bank. In other countries, it has become, continues to be of service to foundations. But the banks are servicing women who are a lot different than, say, my mission of encouraging what is so exciting in this city. I have never, could ever have possibly dreamed the size and the support and the accomplishments of what these people have done. And yet they were the first to demonstrate that it could be, and it is possible. And so my first impression was Colombia is filled with gorgeous and very smart women, beautiful, smart, experienced women, and it still is. It's amazing, you know? So, I mean, anybody could drive a bus down here and have a huge success. I kind of like that expression, you know, I mean, but it was hard work. It was. It was a lot of hard work, and it took a long time to do it, and I didn't do it alone. I couldn't have done it without the help of a lot of people. Margarita, that we had a meeting every 2 years. All of the membership would come. John used to say, you can't have that meeting, you don't have money to do it. I said, we'll find the money. you know. And yet, and then all policies in the early days were set by all members. So there was not a board that made, or 4 or 5 people that made all the decisions. And that was an exciting experience. So I've always tried to say that I was part of a big thing. And how do you separate out somebody who is the bus driver or the one who conceptualized something? You know, this was a road. Who knows where it's going to go or where it's going to end? I just like to be part of it. And I've gotten to the stage where I hope I can stay part of it for a little while longer.
I'd like to answer that question also, if I could.
Yes, of course.
I think the WWB Foundation in Colombia is a remarkable success.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I travel throughout the world and I see here an organization that's financially stable, is sustainable, and is still on mission. The original mission of helping women, and helping women not just with money, but also with capacity building. And I think what the foundation here has been able to demonstrate is that it is possible to stick on mission, it is possible to have an impact, and it is possible for women from the slums to actually make it and have a business, and some of them to grow and become real entrepreneurs at a very different level. So I just think my own feeling is that this is a model that we wish it could be replicated in other parts of Latin America, but also the world, which basically says that women are, first of all, are at the center, that second of all, they need money, yes, they need banking, but they also need financial services and moral support in order to get through that brecha, that gap. So I think it's a model. I think it should be exported without ruining the local capacity locally. But that's my feeling. I think there's we would have to go to many other organizations, women-owned banking organizations, to find the success that we have found here.
Well, I just have to add, though, success has many different meanings in different places. And I think we all need to understand that diversity of language. Nobody can touch what they have done here. I mean, I've been around the world too. I haven't seen anything like it. But there are other organizations who you have to say they're successful also, you know, but they've done different things. So it's important to try to continue to define what we mean. And I think you could create a whole new stichting, as we called it under Dutch law, Fundación here, with WWB, and that could be for financial services, banking training, banking whatever, and then put Colombia down below, or Chile, or the Dominican Republic, and it can be different organizations as long as they have a guiding slide of what its big mission really is. It always has been, and that is servicing low-income community people, to own women, to own their own production and own their own reproduction, which is not the case in many countries. We still have a lot of work to do.
No, in the beginning, we provide
Guarantees.
Guarantees.
Yeah,
Then
guarantees.
credits.
Yeah, and after, and FES, the
Fundación FES.
Fundación FES has the money that the Inter-American Development Bank give to Fundación Carvajal, and FES manage the money, and we just provide the guarantee. We sign, and we have a very good record. But after, we need to have somebody who help us in the office or whatever. We need to provide loan, and we start small loans, and we start individual loans. We start solidarity groups loans, and it's very slowly that we really evolve to more financial special institution.
Pues I'm a bit overwhelmed right now, but no. So in 2011, the board decided to create a bank, and I think that was a really good idea and the best idea, because Fundación as an NGO was all over the country giving loans and microinsurance, and we needed to have access for savings. So in 2011, we created Banco W and decided to be an independent organization. And that, I think that was really wise. Not to be the foundation of the bank, meaning we work with the person who has a credit with the bank, and then we help them generate capacity so that they can pay back better the credit. So we decided to be independent, being an autonomous organization. So the bank does its job as a bank, as a microfinance bank, as a bank with a double bottom line, with financial and social profit. And Fundación starts to understand and develop products and services related with capacity building and knowledge around what is needed for low-income, especially low-income women entrepreneurs. So at Fundación, we changed our rules inside how we worked, and we said we're not gonna do the job of the bank. The bank is a bank with all responsibilities of a bank, and we as Fundación, we're going to do the other part of the business, and but for everybody, not only for clients for the bank, they can come as well, but what we want is for especially women make better decision and autonomous decision over herself, her business, her micro business, and her family. So I think that was really interesting, and it was very wise to separate the businesses. Right now in the new strategy, what we're trying to accomplish is to generate some kind of alternative mechanisms of access to capital, not only meaning credit, but meaning alternatives that the banks today cannot get the solution for low-income people, because microfinance, mainly in Colombia, as most of us are banks, the credit average credit loan is bigger. So most of the population, low-income population, is underserved, and this needs to be with innovation and getting to have different types of alternatives of access to capital. How, why, when, and how is it going to be? We're working on it in our innovation lab in order to produce some kind of mechanism, alternative mechanism. So for me, financial inclusion, when I started to understand what microfinance was about, financial inclusion was only about access. What we found, and we're working in an interdisciplinary working group with the private sector, the public sector, and academia, financial inclusion, especially for women. The big gap is around access, use, and channel, meaning that not only they have to have access, but they have to use the products, financial products, but they have to have the channel, technology. They need to have the channel in order to get to access these financial products and services. So that's about financial inclusion is about. And what we need to do is to provide access to everybody, access, use, and channel. And for us at Fundación, and the rural areas are very important. And so our strategy is centered right now to go into the rural areas where the big gap in Colombia, and I'm sure that the Global Findex shows us, is the main gap is with women in terms of financial inclusion is in women, youth, and rural areas. So that's where we want to focus our strategy. We wanted to understand what does a low-income women entrepreneur needs, wants, and we found out that 4 big areas. There was financial literacy, digital literacy, entrepreneurship, and leadership were the areas where we had to work in order for them to generate this autonomous decision-making over herself, her business, and her family. But one of the things that we all work with, we co-create with the community, and one of the big burdens that they had was gender-based violence. They can do great in the business, but if they don't have a healthy household, it's not going to work. So we started to understand what gender violence was about, but we also wanted to understand what do they understand what gender violence is about, and what are the actions and support from the different actors regarding this violence. So we started to do research, but we also started to do some focus group with these women and men to understand how do they understand violence, and what are the steps that they have to make in order to be supported by the different institutions that work for gender-based violence. So then we came with this sort of a booklet. It's a manual that tells with gamification, edutainment, that's a methodology that we use. What are the steps that they have to do if they're a witness of gender-based violence or they're a victim of gender-based violence? What are the steps that they have to do in order to have the support they need? So here comes Ofelia No Está Sola, which is our strategy, and right now it is in 7 countries of Latin America, and well, that's a very important strategy because we need to attack that gap in order for women to be completely autonomous in their decision making.
I think first and foremost, the most important thing is for all of us to quit being afraid and being afraid of new experiences and new adventure. There's genuine fear that's necessary in terms of analyzing risk. But to be afraid of anything because it's different is a serious problem, I think, in building what I believe in and what I hope we're moving towards as a global world. And I think that if more Latinas could come here and see what she has done, all of Latin America would change very quickly, because I think it's remarkable. And I think that the idea of looking at the possibility of change that technology is already bringing us and doing, I've had to give up trying to understand the technology. I mean, there's some of it I've learned, and I have somebody that helps me, but there's no way I could understand. I don't understand the fundamentals. The younger generation does. And I would challenge all of us sitting in this room whether we understand some of what the younger people understand in terms of the fundamentals of that technology and where it's going and how you use it effectively and honestly. And I think that this fear is keeping us from demanding that the public get more information about the research technology and understanding what the scientists or what the technicians are saying and doing. We just need to start speaking up and demanding it so that we understand where the world is going. If people want to complain to politicians and complain to the government and complain to religions and complain without really knowing the issue. And so more of us need to be part of that evolving society. And whether we like it or not, over the next 10 years, the world will be a very different place. Very different. I won't be here. I mean, I'd be very surprised. I wouldn't know what was going on at all if I were here 10 years from now. But anyway, that's another issue I'll understand. But I think that there's so much fundamentalism in terms of educating the world about how to take on more control over local economies. The African economies is something a lot of people could learn. Local women, the big banks hate the African women because they keep the power at the local level within their local communities. One of the banks of Women's World Banking in Africa, does nothing but savings, because the lending is all done at the grassroots, and mamas aren't going to give that power up, because we are talking about power. So part of what they're doing here is, we saw these 2 women yesterday. They have been so empowered that they're telling their communities of how we can help you, rather than going out and looking for outside help. So I've said too many words, I know that, but I think it's just thinking about what we're afraid of. How do we get beyond asking for information and knowledge, talking to people who don't understand who we are, I'm going home and learn more Spanish, I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, seguro lo hace. Llega hablando español.
But I just think that it's not a big problem. I mean, it's not a difficult thing to do once you get verbalize and speak out. And I said to the young man who's been translating me, I have to tell you this story because it's really touching. I have a young man who met us at the airport who was my translator, thanks to the Fundación. And he has been sitting with me through more interviews than I think I've had in my lifetime since I've been here. And they've been interesting and fun. But his own understanding and his own confidence in understanding what Fundación is on, what I've been doing, has just changed because he verbalized it instead of holding it all inside. So it's a very important thing to listen to people, but then verbalize what they're saying, or ask a question about it. Then you take control of it instead of it controlling you. So, sorry, I didn't mean to dominate the conversation.
No, you don't need to repeat the question. With climate change and war and the things that are going on in today's world, the polarization of politics, it's very easy for people to get depressed, especially young people, because they don't see potential future, many of them. And I think the main message we have to youth is that it is possible to be an optimist, and there are things that work, and that there are examples that are models of how things can work, and that it is important to be an idealist and to hang on to that idealism and not give it up, and to follow your passion. And I think it's possible to be a practical idealist. In other words, I think it's possible to have a vision and then to translate that into practice. Now, it might be difficult, and yes, you have to speak up, you have to speak out, but mostly you have to figure out what is your passion, what is it that you can do to help the world, and then go for it. Don't let some people tell you you can't do it until you figure it out how to do it. So I would just say that my key word for me is optimism, but practical optimism. Optimism with a vision, but a vision that's also rooted in the ground with what can be done in the real world.
What they should not do. Use their thing.
Michaela has said it very clearly. The one thing they should not do is be afraid.
Yeah, don't be afraid. Go for your dreams. It's possible to accomplish any task that you want. And if you have a foundation who can support you and bring a network together, you will be more strong.
Well, we've seen, we've heard the voice of the young people, especially here in Cali after the strike, and we're not used of active listening or listening with empathy. I think that the young people have it more clearly than we do. So sometimes we have to step aside and let the young people and young leaders take over. But on the other hand, I think that young people should follow, as of course what John and Micaela meant, follow their passion, work where their passion is, ask for help. I think that's a good thing, that especially women should ask more for help, or we should ask more for help. But to honor the wisdom of the older generations, that many times young people don't listen, although they have it clear, but the wisdom of older generations is for us to keep and to honor and to make this a better world, having a conversation, a brave conversation, but listening to each other. Not listening in order to answer, but to listen and to get what's important for each one of us.
No, but one of the things that's really important, I don't know if it's on, it doesn't have to be online, but one of the things that I really liked about this foundation is that you're full of very young people, and they're all very happy and very committed, and they're happy, they're dynamic. And I think that takes leadership. They have a great time. But that takes leadership. It's easy to kill that. It's easy to put in bureaucratic structures that say, no, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't be happy, you can't laugh. And I think what you've done in the foundation is that I can go out in the hallway and be happy with people, and people respond. I mean, there's a mystique, there's a mystica.
No, there is. It is.
And that mystica is
Agree.
really
No, it's really true.
spirit. It's really important, and it's really easy to kill that. And it has to be maintained. It has to be nurtured. It has to be
And built
watered.
in.
And I think the foundation's done a great job of doing that.
Thank you.
Sorry.
We want to have fun while we work.
You have to have
We
fun.
want to have fun while we work, and so for me, the most important thing is our team, the people. The people. Without the people, we're zero. And we do work with young people, and we have this sort of. So it's not a DNA test, but when we hire people, we're very careful of what the DNA of the person is regarding passion, social commitment, and we always say that what you're outside, you're inside as well. So yeah, we have to be coherent, and we're here. Our job is really tough, and we work a lot, but that doesn't mean that we work over hours, because we respect the family time and working time. But what we try to do as a team, and I told them yesterday when we had the group meeting, was that when we work as one, magic happens. And I think that the gold of Fundación it's in its people. And we want to have fun. So I said, like, okay, and I always, when I interview everybody that comes in Fundación, I just tell them one thing. If you wake up in the morning and you say, oh, I don't want to go to work, never come back. Please don't come back. Because we have to, we have to do our jobs as if we didn't need the money. So we have to have fun, and we have to have this purpose. And if you don't want to be here, just go away. It's fine. I mean, we have to have the best people working and having fun. Otherwise, it doesn't work.
Oh, fantastic.
Oh, no, Vicky. Bueno, no sé. They have been with us how many years?
I want to just say one more. It doesn't have to be all mine. It doesn't have to be, but I want the last word. I'm only kidding. That one of the positive things that I think are happening, people are beginning to realize, I grew up during the Second World War, and we had one president who took control of what was going to happen in Africa, in Europe. He really ran that war. There's no question about it. A lot of people thought it was Churchill. He was telling Churchill what to do. And he got a lot out of Churchill, that loan program that was built. All the technology was built in the United States and shipped over there. People left New York, Brooklyn, and Queens and all, and shipped over there. What came back were the veterans. And the veterans were given free education to go to law school or to go to business school, okay? So up until now, we have had a management system that is still run by one person, calls the whole thing, then you have vice presidents, and it goes down like this. That is changing. The new generation is demanding a more broader-based sense of decision-making. And that, to me, is like a blessing. We don't need these queen bees and king size. And I think that the recent death of the Queen in England is a very significant moment in history that we should watch. Because I think that I do believe that you all, just watching you run this and watching my translator, you are so far ahead of me, it isn't even funny. And I'm in many ways ahead of the two of us, I mean, to certain degrees. Keep it up, but work hard. That is the first thing. Don't let people get ahead of you. Keep working hard and learning. The most wonderful thing to keep you young is to keep learning. Don't sit back and say, oh, I want security. I have members of my family who live in gated communities, and they're afraid to travel because they're getting older and all. I mean, you cannot imagine how many people told me that it was too dangerous for me to come down here. How could they say that? I had 3 men helping me in and out of cars. Anyway, that's not for That's kind of just to share with you all. But I mean, this guy's been following me around for 2 days. I kept saying, shut off, shut off. But anyway, the one thing I want to take away from here, though, is the logo that you have, because I'm going to have people look at that. I didn't get the T-shirt I got is too small, so I've given it back. Oh, you have one for
¿Y
me?
la foto?
And the picture.
Ah, bueno.
The picture and the
A
T-shirt.
T-shirt, oh, fantastic! Because I am going. You let me. I'll certainly keep you advised what I'm doing, but I'm going to promote this because I think it's fabulous,
Thank you.
and I really do. I don't know who your designer is.
That's a very
Vicky.
Part of that.
Vicky.
It was fabulous. It was fabulous, and I think it should be encouraged for other people to take a look at it and see. And I'm going to go back to work with the stitching and see legally where we stand in terms of creating a global. Because now you have this Latina, this global student leadership that I took to, started at Manhattanville College, and it's the Latinas that came out of the Women's World Banking Network who first went through the program and came back for a reunion.
2000.
Now they've taught 20,000 young people in communities for more, and they've got they have a 501c3, a foundation to do more training and to do more Latina Americana. And the Dominican Republic has provided a certificate that they can take to get back into schools. Doesn't cost them anything. It's totally free. And maybe one person from Brazil, another person from UK, somebody else from Costa Rica, somebody else from Panama. Each one has a class. There are 10 classes, and there are 20,000 people who've turned on to that. So think about what technology can really do. I don't understand it, but other people. But anyway, it's just a ray of hope.
Fundación WWB Colombia. 40 años, impulsando el poder transformador de las mujeres.